I've been driving for Uber for almost 2 years now. It's a decent gig, pays the bills, lets me set my own hours, and gives me the occasional interesting story. Most rides are uneventful, just drunk folks going home from the bar or college kids trying to make it across town. But this one was different, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. It was a Thursday night, nothing special. The roads were quiet and my shift was coming to an end. I figured I'd take one last ride before calling it a night. A ping came through just as I was about to log off. I groaned, but accepted the ride. It wasn't far, just a few miles outside of town, but the pickup location was odd, a gas station that I knew had been closed for years. I pulled up to the place, headlights slicing through the thick fog that had settled in. There wasn't much around except for dim streetlights and empty parking spaces. And then I saw him. He was standing just outside the gas station, wearing a long black coat with his face obscured by the hood. Something about him gave me the creeps right away. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but there was an air about him, like he didn't belong there. I thought about canceling the ride, but my curiosity got the better of me. I rolled down the window. "Are you Michael?" I asked, reading the name from the app. He nodded slowly, and without a word, he opened the door and slid into the back seat. "Where to?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. He leaned forward slightly, and that's when I noticed it. His eyes. They were strange. Too dark, like the pupils had swallowed the irises whole. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I brushed it off as exhaustion. It had been a long night. He muttered the name of a hotel across town, and I nodded, starting the ride. The silence in the car was heavy, almost suffocating. I tried to make small talk, but he didn't respond. He just sat there, staring out the window as the city lights blurred past us. And then things got weird. We were halfway to the hotel when the GPS started glitching. The blue line on the map flickered and the voice directions cut in and out. I knew these streets by heart, though, so I kept driving. But then the roads didn't look familiar anymore. The street signs were all wrong, names I didn't recognize, like Shadow Lane and Eclipse Avenue. I swear I'd driven these streets hundreds of times, but now they seemed different, like the city had shifted around me. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Michael was still there, staring out the window, calm as ever, but something about him looked different. His coat seemed longer, and his hood was pulled further down, casting an even darker shadow over his face. I tried to shake the growing unease. It was just a late night, and my mind was playing tricks on me, or so I thought. Then the streetlights flickered. One by one, they went out, plunging the road into darkness. This is weird," I muttered, mostly to myself. That's when he spoke for the first time. "You know where this road leads?" he whispered, his voice low and cold. A shiver ran down my spine. "No," I replied, my throat dry. "Should I?" He didn't answer, but I saw him smile, a slow, deliberate grin that didn't reach his eyes. I checked the dashboard clock, hoping the ride was almost over. But the clock wasn't moving. It was stuck at 2:17 a.m. I tapped it, thinking it might have malfunctioned, but nothing changed. I pulled out my phone to check the time there. Same thing. 2:17 a.m. No service, no updates. It was as if time had stopped. The roads outside grew darker, the fog thicker. I couldn't even see the buildings anymore, just the faint outline of trees lining the streets. The silence in the car was deafening, broken only by the occasional hum of the engine. My knuckles tightened around the wheel. I had to get out of here. This wasn't right. None of this was right. "I think I'm going to end the ride here," I said, trying to sound calm. "No," Michael whispered from the back seat. I glanced in the mirror. His grin was wider now, stretching across his pale face in a way that didn't seem human. Suddenly, the car lurched forward, as if something had pushed it from behind. I slammed the brakes, but the car wouldn't stop. It kept moving, faster and faster, down the narrow, foggy road. "Hey, what the hell is happening?" I shouted, panic setting in. Michael just laughed, a low, guttural sound that echoed through the car. I yanked the wheel to the side, trying to pull over, but the car wouldn't respond. It was like the steering wheel was locked in place. That's when the whispers started. They were faint at first, barely audible over the hum of the engine, but they grew louder, more insistent, until it sounded like 100 voices whispering in unison. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but the tone was menacing, like they were warning me or taunting me. The car finally came to a screeching halt in the middle of a desolate road. I didn't wait to find out what was going on. I threw the door open and scrambled out of the car, my heart pounding in my chest. The fog was thicker than ever, swallowing everything around me. I could barely see the car, let alone the road ahead. I turned around, expecting Michael to follow, but the back seat was empty. He was gone. For a moment, I stood there, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Then, in the distance, I saw something, 2 glowing orbs floating in the fog. They looked like eyes, and they were coming closer. I didn't wait to find out what those things were. I ran, sprinting down the foggy road, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The whispers followed me, growing louder with every step I took. I finally saw the faint glow of a street lamp in the distance and bolted toward it. As I reached the light, the whispers stopped, and the fog began to lift. I was standing in the middle of a familiar street, just a few blocks from my apartment. The clock on my phone read 2:18 a.m. Only 1 minute had passed since I checked it in the car. I looked around, trying to find any sign of the cab, but there was nothing, just an empty street and the faint hum of the street lamp above me. I never found out what happened that night. I reported the ride to Uber, but they told me no one named Michael had ever booked a ride with my account. I checked my car, but there was no sign of anyone having been in the back seat. To this day, I don't know if it was real or just a bad dream, but every time I drive past that old gas station, I feel a chill run down my spine. And sometimes late at night, when the roads are quiet and the fog rolls in, I swear I see him standing on the side of the road, waiting for his next ride.